Hi, welcome to the video. I'm Dame and this is Dame Over, and in today's Battlefield 2042 video we're having a close look at update number 3, which has been live from this morning on the 2nd of December. The patch notes for this one are very lengthy, so I'm going to do my best to skip over the stuff that's not so important to try and keep the video time down, but if there are more important things to do with the gameplay, for instance, I'm going to spend a little bit longer and chat about those. Now before we get into it, I want to remind you guys that I stream here on YouTube and on Twitch 6 days a week. I alternate between the two platforms, so if you want to catch some more live Battlefield 2042 content as well as some other games, then drop a sub here or drop a follow on Twitch and hopefully I get to see you on the streams. Right, let's kick this off. Now, what seems to make sense to me is to just run through the list and explain things that need explaining. Knowing how DICE put out the patch notes and the way they describe things is definitely going to be the case at some points. So here we go. Under the general fixes, changes, and improvements, we have the recent players screen now finally includes everyone from previous matches rather than a random selection of a few players for easier reporting. There's been a change to the interaction system, so it swaps from the default interact text or multiple interactions, like if you're using an elevator or something like that. So it's going to actually reflect the action you're about to do, i.e. open a container or call an elevator. There's been a fix to the Kaleidoscope server room not having the right lighting, a resolved issue related to the velocity or trajectory while spawning in jets, so you don't just get absolutely yeeted across the map when you decide to spawn in on someone using a jet. There have been improved helicopter animations in flybys during insertion, and if you've ever been killed in a vehicle and fallen through the bottom of the earth and gone into what can only be described as limbo, there has been an improvement to address that issue. So if you're killed in a vehicle, you should no longer fall beneath the level geometry. There's been improvements to the streaming assets in the deploy screen presentation. I actually have no idea what that means, but I think basically what they've intended you to see, you can now actually see. And the player no longer gets stuck on a zipline/rope after exiting a vehicle after entering it too close to a zipline or a rope. So again, something in the game that is now working as intended. You can park as close as you like to your ziplines and still use them without being punished for it. There's also been a fix to the really weird bug where if you exit an open seat early during the enter animation, it no longer causes your aim to pitch and lock upwards, and the correct field of view is applied immediately following insertion sequences. So getting in and out of tanks, getting in and out of choppers, jets, and so forth. Next up, we've got the UI. So there's been a big overhaul here. Starting with the collection screens, they are now easier to use and it's much clearer as to what you're interacting with, as well as improving the ways that you're able to manage your attachments via the collection screens, basically just reducing the amount of button presses and clicks you have to do to build a loadout, which can take an annoyingly lengthy amount of time. There have also been added new markers to make your newly unlocked items way easier to find, which is fantastic. There are reported instances where the scroll function didn't work in the options screens, which is now fixed. And as far as the UI during gameplay, or just after in this case, the player card screen at the end of round screen has had additional polish added to it. So, I mean, yeah, obviously everyone was asking for that. That's time well spent. There's been an improvement to report a player flow, so it's much easier to report people for toxicity and cheating. Again, it's just going to be a reduction in the amount of button presses that you need to do. The in-game scoreboard now properly scales to match screen safe zone settings. Don't know why that wasn't tested in the first place. There's been a fix to visual effects remaining on the screen during the end of round, and the comma rows, which has been a big issue so far, has had an improved responsiveness added to it, so you can actually open it and use it. There's been a fix to inactive objects showing in the comma rows for defenders in Rush and Breakthrough, and also fixed objectives not showing in the comma rows for attackers in Rush. And this next one is one that I feel like I need to try and work out myself. Implemented focus restoration for screens. So the focused button is remembered when re-entering a screen. Now this to me can only mean that because you've selected something, let's say you decided to put on a silencer on a weapon, when you come away from it, it's going to remember that you've just selected that silencer. So if you went back to it, that would be the latest thing that it's going to select rather than going back to the beginning, which it did before. Again, reducing the amount of button presses, but the wording of most of these patch notes is ridiculous. So hopefully that makes sense. The next section is Matchmaking and Friends, and because everyone that plays Battlefield 2042 only has 3 friends, this is definitely going to help a lot because that's as many as you can have in the squad. There's been an improvement to the experience between your end of round screen and the main menu, so people won't be getting kicked out and all of that business. I hope that's what that means. It improved matchmaking reliability and reduced instances of matchmaking failed, which happens almost all the time, and an improvement to the crossplay invite flow. So no longer are you going to struggle to get your friends that are playing on Xbox, if you're on PC or PlayStation or whatever, to get into the same game as you. There's also been an improvement added to help you find your friends when you're in the game, so they'll just be easier to find. As far as matchmaking goes, there's been an issue that's been addressed when you're getting stuck in in unresponsive game states, so where the round fails to properly start and you end up having to quit and all of that business. There's been a fix to friend invitations for players on PC, and there's also been a fix for the issue where friends list was sometimes not fully up to date. A couple of good fixes in there, but one that doesn't really seem to cut the mustard for me is addressed servers getting stuck in unresponsive game states. It doesn't say that it's fixed, so yeah, fingers crossed. Progression and unlocks. Now, this is something a lot of people have been struggling with, especially trying to unlock all of those attachments and not being able to farm bots in Portal, but still actually being able to farm bots in All Out Warfare. There's no cohesion there whatsoever. Who made that decision? There has been an introduction of weekly missions, providing set challenges that reward cosmetic unlocks, a la Battlefield 5. Should have been much easier to add that in during the launch, and there's also been an added first match bonus of 1,000 Dark Market credits for Hazard Zone, which is great news for the 12 people that have actually played Hazard Zone. There's been an improved overall XP and rank tracking and reliability, so it might actually work. It says improved, it might work, who knows. And improved mastery rank tracking, again, might work, might not. Improved reliability of the player card tracking as well, and the required level to unlock an item is no longer visible once the item is unlocked. A visual bug which they've now got rid of, which you would have noticed if you just unlocked a gun and you went to go and put it into your loadout, you would still see the level next to it. A Portal specific fix where mastery badges weren't displaying is now actually working. That has been fixed, and this is one that sort of went over my head during my gameplay because I use Angel all the time. There's been a fix to an issue that was not properly awarding XP for Angel resupplies. I honestly had no idea this was even happening. The 3D preview of vehicles now displays the correct customizations in the collection menu, and there's also been an added notification when reaching a new player card badge tier and another notification when reaching a new mastery tier. Next up, we have rendering. So for all of you guys that are really struggling with your benchmark PCs and your 3080s, let's hope that something has been improved here. They have addressed a variety of visual flickering and stuttering issues, finally. Improvements to water rendering when aiming down sight. There's been an added sight definition for iron sights to allow the correct ADS for the VCAR. Leaving ADS is now smoother than before on Xbox One and PlayStation 4 consoles. Multiple graphical issues affecting water reflections have been addressed. Character rendering for players joining a match in progress has been addressed. Improvements to the artifacts affecting DLSS implementation has been improved, and there's been a fixed flickering in the Oasis water in El Alamein on deploy. There's been fixed animations, sometimes glitching and picking up a weapon from the ground, fixed aircraft, sometimes showing up with the wrong landing gear visuals, and another issue that has been fixed that would cause in or incorrect bullet impact effects when shooting near water. If any of you guys have been using the Stuka, you might have noticed that the visual effects don't align properly with the airplane. That has now been fixed. And there have been some fixed skinning issues for several PP29 weapon skins. Don't know what that means. Probably means that the skins don't actually stay after you've selected them, because that seems to happen quite a lot. And the last one for the rendering, and this one that actually doesn't make any sense, shifted PSO1 scope forward on AN94 to prevent clipping into screen while idle. If anyone knows what that means, please get in the comments and let me know, because what? Maps is short and sweet, unfortunately. Over 150 individual fixes, small changes and improvements across all of the maps. Luckily they don't list all of those because this would go on until next week. The level geometry has been improved across all levels, addressing issues like players getting snagged or trapped, and there's been spawn issues resolved, visual glitches like lens flare, visible seams in the sky, collision and placement issues, and local audio placement on multiple maps has been fixed. Hazard Zone, by far the least played mode in all of Battlefield 2042 and probably in all of Battlefield history, has had a huge ton of stuff that's been improved and changed and bug fixes added to it. There are 30 patch notes specific to Hazard Zone, and having a look at each of these 30 patch notes, it looks like almost every single aspect in Hazard Zone was not working as was intended. So if you do play Hazard Zone and you want to check these notes up for yourself, I'm going to ask you to read the patch notes, because, well, otherwise it's just me naming pretty much every single thing in the game and saying that it's then had a slight improvement. Next up, we've got the Battlefield Portal. So there's added server information for the pause menu, so you can now actually see what server you're in after you've joined it. Added support for reporting a server from the pause menu as well. Thank God that's been implemented. There's been added support for the server admins to write periodic server messages. They've simplified the server settings screen design, which means that it's going to not take you 7 years to find anything that you'd like to actually play. There's been a fix to the issues where bullet spread would be too high when trying to fire while you're zoomed in right after sprinting for some Portal weapons. The maximum human player players displaying incorrectly in the modifiers tab for free-for-all game modes has been fixed. They've added different loading music based on which portal map is loading. Setting a low max health multiplier for vehicles will no longer cause them to spawn in on fire. I had no idea that was a thing, but how the hell did that pass testing? I can tell you how it passed testing. It wasn't tested. Aircraft within Portal now display their equipped missiles and bombs correctly. That blows my mind. And there's been an added UI indicator for Rush to show when the next sector will start. There's also finally been a fix for a visual issue while reloading several launchers, the RPG-7, the S'more, Bazooka, Panzerschreck. And now we get to some of the good stuff, the builder editions for Battlefield Portal. We can now select the Rush game mode for layouts of all of the 2042 All-Out Warfare maps via Portal. For some reason, they've not put this in All-Out Warfare. God knows why. There's also an official vehicle team deathmatch game mode, an official team and free-for-all gunmaster template, and a new official infection template, taking what all of the community have done and claiming it for themselves. Good job, DICE. There have also been a ton of other fixes specific to the different battlefields that you can play in Portal. So for 1942, Bad Company 2, Battlefield 3, etc. Most of them are to do with guns and weapons not doing the right damage that they should, so there's been quite a lot of weapon damage and a few other improvements as well. I'm not going to go into details on those because again it would take absolutely forever. And now we're back into some more general fixes. So for the user experience, we've had a series of visual, audio and gameplay improvements to weapons, vehicles and gadgets. I can only hope that that means that the audio is going to work as it's intended and the weapons and vehicles are a little bit more balanced, but there doesn't seem to be that much information as far as this goes. The plus menu customization experience has been improved, so hopefully it actually works instead of just bugging out. You can now also select the damage indicator color for soldiers and vehicles separately, and pinged objects now remain visible when occluded. There's a few other user experience things as well, but I'm not going to bother with those because they're negligible. And specifically for Conquest, there is one change only where they've changed the information spamming in Conquest. So if you see in the world log, they would have reduced the amount of messages about flag state changes so they're not as distracting and it's not popping up on the screen as much. Breakthrough has a few more fixes. They've tuned the capture times for Breakthrough, doesn't specify if it's longer or it's shorter, so that's really helpful. They've improved the out of bounds defender spawning in Breakthrough to ensure easier safe spawning. There have been some improvements to the Breakthrough UI, so it enables you to better track round progress in the form of a game mode widget. Have no idea what that looks like until I actually jump in the game. And the game mode widget inside the scoreboard has been updated to put emphasis on sectors and attackers reinforcement, so it'll be easier to track those stats in the game and you can see how your team is doing and how the enemy team is doing. But this specific widget only appears while you're playing Breakthrough and Rush. You're now able to see the elapsed time in a round. It's been added in both the scoreboard and the deploy screen. There's been another addition to the UI if you're playing as the attacker. The score and the progress bar will have a pulsating effect on them when your tickets are below 25% of the initial tickets that you start with, and this appears everywhere that you'd expect it to appear. There have also been some UI improvements to indicate when the attacking team has reached the last sector, and other UI improvements to indicate when the defending team loses a sector. And finally, there's been an issue that's been fixed that could cause the end of round screen to display incorrect scores for the attacking team, which obviously, because there's no scoreboard, is even more baffling. Now, for those of you guys that have made it all the way to the end here, I did my best and cut out, I'm telling you, a ton of notes. I can tell you today that there have been a bunch of unfortunate events, let's say, that have been added in with the latest patch. For those of you guys on PC, you might be experiencing that you're not able to aim horizontally. Now, there have been some fixes that are flying around for this, but they're massively extreme and incredibly stupid because obviously these things didn't get tested. So if you're finding that after you update that you can't aim left and right, you can go to your prof save profile located in Documents, Battlefield 2042 and Settings, and remove the lines that start with GST keybinding.inventory.concept.your. I'm going to leave that on the screen and put that down in the description as well as a link to the tweet from Florian, who is one of the Battlefield community managers. A secondary fix, if that one doesn't work for you, you can reset your key bindings, fantastic, or delete the Battlefield 2042 folder in your documents. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that that's not actually the case. And let's not forget that we've had a bunch of cosmetics added to the game just in time for Christmas. So in case you weren't feeling festive enough, you can dress up like Santa, which is exactly what everyone's wanted after they've paid full price for a game that still doesn't actually function in any way that's better than a pre-alpha. Now, I've got to hand it to the devs at DICE. They've obviously worked their fingers to the bone to get this out and have done a very, very good job of creating a long list of things that needed to be improved, but it feels like lots of this stuff was on the back burner and was just waiting to be implemented at the right time anyway. I doubt that over the last few weeks all of these fixes could have been put in place without something going wrong, and clearly lots of things are. Players are really struggling to connect to the servers. They've got persistent issues with even just connecting, and that seems to be happening more and more. And as far as going through the files and deleting your documents folders, I don't think many people are going to do that when the alternative option is to just actually remove the game from their PC. Seems to be a case of 1 step forward, 12 steps back yet again. So if you are still playing Battlefield 2042, let me know how your experience is after the update. Jump down in the comments and let me know what you've experienced and if any of these fixes have actually applied. And if you are one of the 12 people that has played Hazard Zone, I'd like to know that in the comments as well. Please, you deserve some sort of award for putting yourself through that absolute pointless pain. Here's a really quick thank you to my Damer Operatives, those of you guys supporting the channel on Patreon, and to my members here on YouTube and my subs over on Twitch. I love you very, very much and think about you so often at inappropriate times. So if you found this video useful at all, please do hit that like button, drop a sub if you want to catch up with some more content, and I will catch you in the next one. That's Dame over. Peace.